Lent is overrated. We begin the season of Lent on Wednesday. I have mixed feelings about this. On one hand, a priest has to like a season in which people renew their faith practices. Some church members become more disciplined. Some take more time for reflection and for prayer and for study. And all that is great. On the other hand, Lent has gotten too big for its britches. Lent is a secondary season in the church year. Its only purpose is to prepare for a much, much, much more important season, Easter. The celebration of the resurrection is the central theme of the Christian faith. From the very beginning of Christianity, the first day of the week, Sunday, called the Lord's Day, was always a celebration of the resurrection of Jesus on the first day of the week. Sunday was the primal celebration. We know this from the most ancient documents we have, both by Christian writers and also by outside pagan observers of the first Christians. Sunday came first, and Easter Sunday was the most important Sunday of the year. Now, eventually, it became the custom in the church to get ready for Easter. And at first, it was a season of 3 days. On Thursday, the Last Supper of Jesus was commemorated. Eventually, the day was called Maundy Thursday, the day of the New Commandment. That word Maundy comes from the Latin word for commandment. And the new commandment is, do this for the remembrance of me. Then, Friday, the cross was the focus, and eventually it became called Good Friday. Not because the torture and execution of the innocent Jesus was good, but because God brought good out of that horror. And at first it was all about those 3 days: Maundy, Thursday, Good Friday, Easter. The church leaders even had a fancy name for this complex of 3 days. They called it the Triduum. That's Latin for 3 days. Catchy, huh? Later, the church decided to make the season longer by pushing it back. First, they pushed it back a whole week. From Palm Sunday to Easter Day is still called Holy Week. Well, then, they pushed it back even farther. A time for training brand new Christians would be a good thing, right? So they made it 40 days. Jesus was in the wilderness 40 days. The children of Israel wandered in the wilderness 40 years. So a season of Lent lasting 40 days seems like it's a neat parallel. The 40-day season of Lent became a time for teaching pagans to become Christians and then baptizing them at the Easter celebration. So it was still all about Easter. Every Sunday is Easter, even in Lent. Don't believe me? Count the days from Ash Wednesday to Easter Day. It's only 40 if you leave the Sundays out. Every Sunday is Easter, even in Lent. I think Lent has gotten a little too big for its britches. In church life today, the 40 days of Lent has become a bigger deal than the great 50 days of Easter. That is backwards, my friends. But you see, there is a strain or a theme in Christianity which sees human beings as totally wretched, depraved sinners. Because we humans have fallen from our original image of God, we're now degenerate and worthless apart from a special rescue by God. Now that view, while true in part, has been overemphasized in the history of the church. Those of us who grew up in church have often lived with a whole lot of guilt because of the constant drumbeat of those teachings. But just as Easter Day has priority over Lent, creation has priority over redemption. Humanity was created as good, according to the first chapter of the book of Genesis. Original blessing came first before original sin. The blessing and the goodness come first. Now, my daughter Marie gets this. When she was young and still living at home with us, she came to church all the time. She may be mentally challenged, but she understood the seasons of the church year. And she did not like Lent. There was this movie we used to have on tape. We used to enjoy it. It was a movie with Richard Dreyfuss and Bill Murray. It was called What About Bob? Some of you may have seen that movie. In the movie, there's this father who's frustrated with his preteen son who wears black all the time and does not seem to respect his dad. And at one point, the father, who is a psychiatrist, says, "Always wearing black. What is it with you and this death fixation?" And the son wisecracks, "Maybe I'm mourning my lost childhood." Well, my daughter Marie has a way of remembering song lyrics and lines from movies and then quoting them. One time, she walked into this church on the first Sunday of Lent, and she looked around and she said, "Death fixation." I agree with Sweet Marie. Now, please understand, I am not saying we should junk Lent. I do think, however, we should beat it back a little bit. Don't let it take over and rob you of the joy of the resurrection. Every Sunday is Easter, the celebration of the resurrection. Now, give something up for Lent if you want to, for the sake of self-discipline. That's fine. But don't make that what your faith is all about. Your faith is all about the resurrection. Now, my daughter also gave me my theme for this whole year of 2016. I said this in a sermon at the beginning of January, and I'm going to stand by this all through the year. She once said, "Lighten up, God boy." And I resolved to look for the joy this year. I want to find the fun. I want to grab the grace. I want to bank the blessings. And Lent is not going to stop me. Christianity is not about Lent. It's about Easter. Church is not about gloom. It's about joy. Faith is not a death fixation. Faith is a resurrection fixation. So as weird as this sounds, I'm going to be guided by something that comes from the funeral service in the Book of Common Prayer. These words have meant a great deal to me, and they come right out of the committal service. Even at the grave, we make our song. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. Amen.